Good morning, everyone. This is BritSimon. So thought I'd jump on and take some questions from anybody that would like to ask any questions. So let me just start with the obvious. Still no news on DV 2020 and DV 2021. So for those of you that are waiting for the outcome of the lawsuits, we just continue to be patient, and there's really nothing we can do to hurry up the process. It literally it takes as long as it takes. That's all we can say about that, which is frustrating, but that's the way it is. So anyway, so if any of you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those, mainly on DV 2024 and of course DV 2025 that is coming up. What else did I want to mention? I wanted to cover. There was an interesting question that I got in my blog. Wanted to address that. Where was that one? Let me just see if I can pull that up. Yeah, I can't see that now. But anyway, I can see somebody has asked a question about 2 annual appointments in January. So it's good that people are already receiving those appointments in January. Do please go and watch the video that I created about the October issuance data. That's a very good sort of leading indicator of which embassies are going to be behaving poorly, which embassies are going to be better. I would have said, for example, that before I saw that data, I would have been very worried about Nairobi. I'm less worried about Nairobi after seeing that data. So there are some interesting things that we can get from that, right? Let's see. So let's see some of these questions here that we've got. Hand pink waving. I don't know what the hand pink waving thing means, but oh well. Just in case, always like your name. Hello, good morning to you. Seeing October interviews in Africa, can you comment on Nairobi? Yeah, so they did pretty well. So Nairobi took 199 people in for interview, 163 of which I believe were local, and the rest were from out of the area. So that's a pretty good. I mean, it's not brilliant, but it's better than it has been, right? So it's a reasonable start. So I'm hopeful for Nairobi. Maybe they can do something. Another question there about Nairobi. Okay. DV24 EU 36.5K. Should I wait for January release? Any suggestions? Good or bad number? Look, it's a little bit of a high number, but we won't know how high it is until January the 1st. If you watched my video just in the last few days, where I used Asia to explain the distribution of case numbers and holes throughout the range, you'll know that what we really don't know is how many holes there will be in the early number ranges, right? So we don't really know how many cases there are in front of you. But once we have more data on from SEAC on January 1st, you'll get a much better perspective at that time. So just wait until then. And really, you're going to wait until your number is current. It doesn't matter what I say to you. You're going to wait until the end of the year anyway, right? It's not like I could say to you, oh, well, there's going to be a cutoff at 35.2K or something. I can't be that precise. I can only say, look, here's roughly where it's going to be, but it depends on all sorts of factors about how things are going to proceed through the year, what trouble there will be at various embassies around the world, including in your area, and so on. So it can only be a rough estimate, and so you're going to have to wait until later in the year to really know your position. All right. The one thing that you do know is that you're not going to be current in January or February or March, right? With a number like that, it's not going to be early. So that's all you need to know. What is it with this hand pink waving thing? I don't understand. Somebody's got to explain what the hand pink waving thing is. Don't know what that means. Is it something? I don't know. I didn't quite understand your latest video about Asia. Do you mean Asia's bulletin will jump after 20K? It's so I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to explain in that video the distribution of numbers. And yes, it is possible that when we get to higher case number ranges, we will see bigger increases in the visa bulletin. But that depends how many people have already gone current before that point, right? And so let me just tell you something here. Let me just go to TV charts. My favorite website on the internet is Arthesius's website. So if I look at the data from DV 2023, I know that there should be, to issue the 55,000 visas, we should see a number of around about 70,000. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. Let me pull that up. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to answer this question to try and make this a little bit more real for people, more clear, right? So share screen, entire screen, this one, share. Okay. All right, so this is the DV 2023 numbers, right? Now, we can see at the bottom here that 75,000 people were scheduled for interview. That was too many. There should have been about 70,000. We know that when they scheduled 75,000, what that meant was there was a bunch of people who were scheduled for interview in September that suddenly had their interviews cancelled. So if we start seeing globally, if we see more scheduled interviews than about 70,000, then we're starting to get into a dangerous time. I was pointing that out in DV 2023. Some people listened, some people didn't, but some people were surprised. Now, why do we need 70 or 75,000 people to issue 55,000 visas? Well, because some will stay at ready status, which is a status that includes people who just submitted their DS-260, had it processed, they got scheduled for an interview, but they've decided they won't go to the interview. They don't have the finances, or they know they're going to get refused, or whatever it might be. They decide not to go to the interview. So there are some people like that in the set. There are also people that are either refused permanently. About 5,000 of the 75,000 were refused permanently, and 4,000 were left on 221G status, which is administrative processing. And that yielded just over 55,000 visas. And that was too many visas. I mean, that's they broke the rules by going that far. So we know it can't be any more than this, right? Now, you can do the same thing that I just did globally with any particular region to issue the 9,600 visas, which is well in excess of its quota. They scheduled 12,890 people, which was 6,200 cases. So in Asia, one way to estimate where the cutoff will be is once we have the data, you could go and see, okay, what are the first 6,000 cases looking like? Until what number does that include? Take it to 7,000, the first 7,000 cases, because some of the people that are selected will never even send in their DS-260, right? So maybe it goes to 7,000 or even 8,000. But you know that once you get to, let's say, 8,000 cases, every case after that point is at risk, right? And in fact, it's probably before that. Because I'm sort of, I'm being sort of slightly generous with the non-response numbers. And you could do that for any region, right? So 30,000 people or 15,500 selectees. That's probably slightly low for Africa because they didn't hit their quota. But every other region either hit or exceeded their quota, right? So EU had 11,600 cases. You could look at that and see how many cases, once you've got all the data, how many cases are in the total set, and where is the 11,000, 12,000, 13,000 point, right? You could do that sort of estimate when we've got the data. When we don't have the data, you can't do that sort of estimate. Okay, you have to be patient and wait for the data in January. Okay, so whether there will be big jumps after 20,000 or not, my information was designed to show you that yes, there could be bigger jumps once Nepal and Iran are out of the picture. But on the other hand, by that time, you could find that there's been enough people scheduled for interview anyway to take all of the available visas, right? So that's hope that's sort of slightly helpful. We'll talk about that more in a month from now, right? And then there'll be a lot of data. We'll be able to do a lot of analysis. It'll be much easier to have those sort of conversations. Okay. Okay. All right. So let me just take this question about Dakar Embassy. Any news? No, I don't have any news about Dakar Embassy, but you should look at the video I created that shows you how to look at the factors that show whether your embassy is behaving well or not, right? You should look at how many visas they issued in the month of October, right? How many DV visas? How many other visas were issued to non-DV? Are they operating well? You should look at compare that with the number of selectees for that region, obviously, right? Because a quiet embassy doesn't do very much, and that's okay, right? Whereas a very busy embassy in a country where there's a lot of selectees and they've only taken 10 people, or they've only issued 10 visas, that's obviously a problem, right? So yeah, you can go and have a look at that yourself and figure out. I provided a video that shows you where to get the official data, where to see the data from Zarthisius, and so on. So you can definitely go and have a look at all of that data and figure out for yourself how you feel Dakar Embassy is doing. Okay. All right. I got an itchy nose. EU24X. Once we get an interview and it's approved, after arriving to the States, how much of that year do we have to stay in the US? Is there a rule for that? There's no rule about that. You can enter the USA and turn right back around and get on the next flight. If you're driving in from Canada, let's say, you can drive into the USA, and I know someone who did this, drive into the USA, become a lawful permanent resident, and turn back around and leave, right? There are rules about how long you can be abroad, be outside of the USA. The green card is not a visitor's visa. It's not a visa to say, oh, I'm going to be able to enter the USA at any time without having to get a B1, B2. That's not what it's about. The green card is to live and work in the USA. You get permission to work. You can live there. You're supposed to live there. So your absences from the USA should be limited, right? But typically when people enter the first time, they sometimes go home because they've got to give up their job, they've got to sell their house, they've got to sell all their cars or whatever they've got in their home country. And it might take them 9 months, 10 months, even up to a year to do that, right? And that's all fine. You can take an absence of up to 12 months from the USA without prior permission. But generally, you want to keep absences to below 6 months. And generally, you want to show that you've established a residence in the USA, that you live there, that you work there. And that's part of the deal, right? That's part of what you're going for the green card for. If you think that's too much time to spend in the USA, then don't bother with the bloody green card. Get a visa, right? Because it doesn't make sense to have the rights but responsibilities of being a green card holder if you only want to visit the USA once or twice a year or something for a couple of weeks. It doesn't make sense to go through the DV lottery process in order to just be an occasional visitor. Okay. EU48X, when do you think I'll have an interview? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We'll see how things shape up. But clearly it's not going to be, I just told someone with EU36K it's not going to be January, February, March. It clearly isn't going to be that time. It's going to be later in the year, obviously. If Nairobi continues that way, is it a good indication? Look, it's a good indication if they're doing work and they're issuing visas. It doesn't mean they're going to continue to do that. It just means that they've started reasonably well. They could stop at any moment, right? So it doesn't really prove anything. It just means that you don't have to be quite so worried about Nairobi doing nothing. Leo Brosh. If we get a green card for 25 and Trump gets in, can he cancel it? As Trump has said he wants to cancel the DV lottery. No, he can't. So he's not going to be able to cancel the DV lottery. That's bullshit for a start. In order to cancel the DV lottery, he would have to change the laws of this country, the immigration laws. And that's really, really difficult to do. There is generally not good agreement from all sides about how to reform immigration in this country. And so if they want to take a program like DV lottery out of the law, then they have to pass a law that says, okay, here's how we're going to replace that. And they have to come up with an idea, maybe a points-based system or something. But without any good ideas, and Trump certainly has got none of those, without any good ideas, they're not going to get common agreement with all of the other parties that need to agree, and therefore they're not going to be able to pass a bill. Okay, so if you get your green card in 25, can he cancel that? Can he say, okay, everybody that got a green card in the last year, they're going to go home? Bullshit. No, he can't say that either. He's not a king. He's not a dictator. He's just, if he became a president, which I think is unlikely, but if he became a president again, he would be, contained within certain rules and laws that he has to do. He can do some annoying things like the travel ban and that sort of stuff that he did before. And he will certainly increase the amount of unfriendly behavior, shall we say, in the USA, both official and unofficial, towards foreigners. He can definitely do that because he's a racist. I mean, that's what he is, right? And he not only is he a racist, which is very clear. And if you're offended at me saying that he's a racist, then you're an idiot, frankly. He's clearly a racist, but clearly he appeals to racists. That's the point. The Ku Klux Klan in this country. There is an organization, the Ku Klux Klan. There is a white supremacist movement in this country. And they love Trump. They love him, right? So you might say, oh, Trump isn't a racist. Well, okay, then why do racists who admit and say and are proud about being racist, why do they love him? Because he's a racist. That's why. And he does things that make racists happy. And so that's why he appeals to them. And, it's an unfortunate fact, but that's the reality. Introverted content creator. How are you? Do we need to take our college grades to the interview, or is the degree enough? Take it all. Take your school transcripts, anything you've got from secondary school. Take college transcripts and the degree. The degree technically isn't enough on its own. Some embassies, some CEOs will accept it, but don't be in your interview and be sitting there thinking, oh, I wish I'd brought this document. Take everything, right? Be over prepared. What you should have is have a pile of papers, some organized papers, have the absolutely required things, ready to hand, like your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, police certificates, all those sort of things, right? Have those things ready and on hand, and then have your education stuff. But behind what you think you're going to have to present for education, have the additional stuff ready to go, ready to if the CEO says, oh yeah, this is a degree, but I'm not satisfied. Do you have anything else to show me how you got into university? Oh, you went through to college. You went through high school. Okay, I can see how you got into university. And therefore did you get your degree? Yeah, do it. Have all of that with you. There's no harm in taking a few extra papers, right? They're not that heavy. Alginda Cuba. Yeah, there are some people here occasionally, Veronica, from Cuba and South America, but I don't know why. I speak Spanish, but I prefer to take questions in English. I also speak French and German, but I'm lousy at both those languages. And so I try and keep all the questions in English so that we are practicing the language of America, which is most commonly English, right? Not officially English, funnily enough. There is no official language of America. I don't know whether you knew that, but it's always an interesting fact to me. But anyway, so we get people from South America, but I don't know why, but we don't get tons. We don't get loads of people. Okay. Hi, Simon. How is Addis Ababa embassy performance? Go have a look. Tink, I've shown how to do that. I've taught you to fish so that you don't have to ask me to give you fish. You can go and follow my techniques to look for yourself. Case number is AF98K. What do you think are my chances? They're going to be small. Your only chance at that sort of case number is if embassies in general, a lot of embassies in Africa misbehave, right? If there are, I don't know how many embassies there are in Africa, but let's say there are 15 embassies in Africa and 10 of them misbehave and you happen to be at the other one of the other 5, then you're in good shape, even at your number, because the misbehaving embassies won't be issuing enough visas, and therefore they'll increase the visa bulletin number. That's basically the impact of misbehaving embassies, but it needs to be a significant number of embassies in the region that takes out a large number of the selectees, right? Because there are so many selectees. There are 55,000 selected applicants in Africa region, and there's only visas for about 24,000 at most. All right, so they're by definition there are less than half the number of visas for everybody, and you're at the back of the queue. At AF98K, you're at the back of the queue, so you're certainly at risk. Okay. We now know the visa issuance for October, but how will we know the interview numbers? You just apply the derivative rate. We don't know the exact numbers, but we know on average there's between about 1.6 and 2.2, depending on the region, people per case. So depending on the region and the country, in fact. So you could say, look, if there is 100 visas issued, you could roughly half that and say that's from about 50 interviews, right? But you don't need to know precisely. It's just an indication, right? We will know precisely, by the way, in January. We'll have that data in January. Okay. Hi, Brett. This is Jason. Thanks for all your help. Interview 11th of January in Joburg. Good. We unlocked the DS260. Didn't make any difference in getting the interview date. As soon as we were current, we received 2NL. Yeah, the story about does unlocking cause delay? Surely by now, most people with an IQ over of about 75, with the exception of a couple of lawyers I know of, understand that whole unlocking thing was bullshit. It was a bad. I explained this on a forum the other day. There were some people who looked at some bad data, some improperly chosen groups of people, and said, "Hey, we've got all these people here, and we're all delayed for our interviews, and that's why we're in this forum, because we're delayed for our interviews. And there's 20 of us, and 10 of us unlocked our cases. Therefore, unlocking causes delay." Completely stupid, illogical set of connections to make. Illogical. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And then they ignore, on the other hand, people like yourself, Jason, that had no impact, right? And then we had a couple of lawyers, bless them, who saw a statement from Miles Morgan, who's the director of KCC. And Miles Morgan is a typical American, not very precise with his language, unfortunately, and not fully aware of how his operation runs, frankly. Actually had to correct himself and made misstatements in various forums in various cases. He actually wrote down incorrect information in sworn statements and had to correct that with other sworn statements. He made some statements in a deposition that were complete bullshit. So already an unreliable source. He made a statement which was a carelessly worded statement. And then a couple of lawyers jumped on that and misinterpreted the carelessly worded statement, and based on that announced that, hey presto, we've decided unlocking causes delay, and told everyone to not unlock, which was extremely stupid advice, bad advice. Been fighting that particular battle for 2 years, because if you don't unlock when you need to unlock, you go into the interview either with bad information on your DS260, which should have been corrected, or because you didn't unlock and then you got current, you can't unlock, and the KCC won't unlock a case once you're current and in AV status. So people couldn't unlock, so they couldn't add on derivatives, and therefore they got visas and their derivatives didn't because they had not unlocked. That literally happened because of that stupid advice. So please, everybody, I know some people still want to argue with me about this, but this battle is won. This argument is over. Unlocking does not cause delays unless it's perfectly logical that it would. If you get married and you have to add a derivative onto your case, then that is going to cause some delay because the derivative has to have some level of background checking. But the upside is you've added a derivative to your case, so it's worth it. It's worth that delay, and you shouldn't worry about the delay, right? So don't make stupid decisions based on incorrect information that leads you to lose your opportunities, right? It's just, people have got to understand that. Anyway, for you, Jason, for your Joburg interview, Joburg are normally pretty good. They did go through a phase, I think that's over, where they were issuing DS5535s quite commonly. I don't think they are now, but do prepare well, okay? But in general, it's not a scary embassy in terms of, randomly, refusing people. It's not like that at all, okay? Is there any news about 2021? No, I covered that at the beginning. There's no news. We're still waiting. What about Guinea-Bissau? I don't know. You go and have a look. It's not one I generally look at, actually, to be honest. I filled DS260 in June while I was in Ukraine. In October this year, I moved to Poland, and I'm planning to stay here until my interview, EU 21,000. Should I change my address in the DS260? Abso-freaking-lutely. I nearly swore there, but yes, that's exactly, Mike, the type of thing where if you had believed this bullshit that unlocking causes delays, you would not have updated your address, and that can cause ambiguity about where you want to be interviewed. Now, obviously, you're not going to be interviewed in Ukraine anyway, but nevertheless, you should absolutely unlock and correct your address now to show where you're actually living. All right? Please do that. Hey, Britt, would you advise me to consider a transfer from my interview from Abu Dhabi to Cameroon, considering the low number of interviews recorded in the month of October? No, I wouldn't make that decision based on one little bit of data. Your AF 55K, right? The current number is 22K. You have loads of time to wait and see more data. So don't jump and start jumping around trying to get yourself moved from an embassy, and you could be out of the frying pan into the fire because it's too early to do that, right? You've got time to wait and see at least another month of issuance data, and see the SEAC data that will confirm all of the work that's been done by the embassies. You'll see that in a month from now, and you won't be current in a month from now. So wait. Right? Don't be jumping around, making life difficult for yourself based on, not having enough data and not needing to make that decision so early. If I cannot find my certificate, says Chrissy, from secondary school, can I get a letter stating that I finished? a letter. I mean, depends on the letter. Bear in mind, it's not about finishing school. Graduation from a high school in America is not about I completed 12 years. It's about I passed the exams that meant I graduated from that, and therefore I'm able to enter a US university or college, as they call them here, right? And so in the same way, you may have finished your schooling, but without your exam results, it's completely meaningless, right? So it's not just getting a letter that normally is going to satisfy the CO. You would have to have your exam results in most countries. They're going to ask for your exam results, right? How did you pass? Okay. Julius from Zambia. I'm participating in DV for the first time and I would like to understand the calendar for DV. I applied in October. Okay, great question, Julius. So you applied in October. It's a lottery. You only have like a small chance of selection, probably about 1 in every 200 years, right? It's that sort of thing. It's not a planned event. It's something you hope to win, but you can't be 100% certain you will be chosen. But if you are chosen, you'll find out in May. In May, you'll go online to the same place, the same website where you applied, and you'll put in your details, your confirmation number and that sort of thing, and you'll see one of two messages. Either the message that says you have not been selected, and probably 20 million people will see that message. And then about 100,000 people will see a letter, right? And the letter says, congratulations, you have been selected. That's in early May, about May 6th or 7th. I don't know the precise date at the moment. That's early May, right? In that same letter, you're given a case number, and the case number says roughly where you are going to be processed for an interview, right? And so interviews will start in October of next year and end the following September the 30th in 2025, right? So it's a slow process. You apply October last year. You find out in May next year. You may have an interview as early as October 1 in next year, but more likely it's going to be sometime in the year after that, right? So yeah, it takes a while. Does it make sense that some embassies may be slow at the beginning of the year due to not enough DS-260s being processed? To an extent it does, introverted content creator. To an extent it does, but essentially what happens is that the first couple of visa bulletins are kind of pulled out of the sky. They're not really based on data. But as we go through the year, the visa bulletin is made larger or smaller based on how many cases they need to fill. And that's based on the capacity of the embassies. So firstly, it's like, how many do we need in, let's say, Europe, right? How many, if we add up all the capacity, France says they can take 50 people. London says they can take 20. Poland says they can take 200, whatever. All of those things will be added up, right? And that forms a capacity for the regional embassies. And then they know, okay, so we need to fill those embassies with about 1,000, let's say 1,000 interviews, right? How do we get 1,000 interviews? Okay, well, firstly, there are going to be people from the previous months who were already current from previous months, but their DS-260 wasn't processed before. And so now it's been processed, and so that will yield some number of people. Let's say that's 600 people, 600 cases. Then they need to reveal another 400 cases. And so, because they need to fill 1,000 interviews. And so they move the visa bulletin up as many as they need to move it up, knowing who's processed, to say, okay, we're revealing the right number of cases for interview. That's how it's supposed to work. In the first month or two, it doesn't work that way terribly well because they don't have the feedback yet. And yes, to your point, there are less people processed in the first couple of months than later on, right? So, you're sort of on the right thinking, but you needed a bit more background, right? Greetings, sir. I'm 24 winner, AF 20K, good number. All my documents name Baron Rutu. except my education document. Birinhu, is there any problems? Not really. You just have to show, with a name like that, I presume that's not a name like Smith in your country. So it's fairly obviously your document, but just a misspelling. This whole thing of misspellings on school documents is very, very common in Africa. Very common. I don't know why it's so common. I don't know if it's because schools are just bloody useless at writing down names, or whether people try and change their names. Or I know people in some countries change their age to try and get free education. But yeah, why there's so many documents with bad names, bad dates, it's a bit confusing. But anyway, your name is not proven by your education document. Your name comes from your birth certificate and your passport, right? And then your education document, you simply have to show that it's your education document. If there's some concern the CO has because the name doesn't match precisely, then you may need to show additional proof that that really was you that that we're talking about. Okay. All right. If a woman has an interview and she has 7 or 8 month pregnancy, what does the counselor decide? Close her visa, get issued or delayed upon up to delivery? No. So I get some very odd questions about pregnancy. People think it's some sort of thing they're doing wrong. Will I get denied if I'm pregnant? If the consular knows I'm pregnant? People think like, oh, this is some sort of bad thing I did. It's not bad. Humans have babies, right? Well, females anyway. I mean, humans have babies. So sometimes you're going to go to interview and you're going to be pregnant. Sometimes you're going to be heavily pregnant. It might be obvious. Mostly, the human that is talking to you is probably going to be happy about that. Why not? Why would you? Why? What's the problem with being pregnant, right? What do they do about the visa? They issue the visa. You're going to be given the visa. You won't be given a visa for the baby because the baby hasn't been born. But once the baby is born, there is a process to add the baby to be able to take the baby with you. I detail that on my website, so that there are different stages, different procedures based on the different stages, depending on whether you get your visa before the birth or after the birth. There are different procedures, but in all cases, there is a way of taking the newborn child. Okay, so relax, it's fine. Okay. How is Uganda's position as far as DV applications are concerned? What's the likelihood of winning if you're a Ugandan DV 2025 applicant? Okay, so the chance of winning is not set by country. The countries are not given some sort of quota or anything like that. Each country is within the region, and the region is what determines your chance of selection. Some countries get more winners because they have more entries, right? If you have a country that has 100,000 entries and you have another country next door with 1 million entries, then roughly speaking, the second country is going to get 10 times more winners because they had 10 times more entries. It's as simple as that. Now, sometimes there will be a very high number of entries, but in that bigger country, there might be a lot of fraud. And so you'll see that they had 10 times the entries, but only 5 times the number of selectees. That's because they had half of their selectees wiped out to do with fraud, right? That's literally what happens. And you can, if you know the data, you can actually see which countries have the most fraud. But that's how it works. For Uganda, I don't know how many entries they're having these days, but your chance in general is to do with the region, and your chance is something like 1 in 200, roughly, which I always say that is 1 in 200 years, to make the point that this is a big deal if you win this this lottery. So there you go. All right, stuff. Maximus. Is it possible that about 30K of participants lost to their interview because they were not reached in the visa bulletin? Is it? Yeah, that could happen. If they've selected too much. So let's take Africa, for example. There are 55,000 selectees in Africa. There are only 24,000 visas available for that group, right? Of the 55,000 selectees, probably 10,000 won't even proceed. So we're down to 45,000, right? 45,000 people that fill in their DS-260s. Of those 45,000, some number won't ever get current, right? We'll have to wait and see how many that is. But that's a reality. There will be a lot of people. If the embassies behave well, there'll be a lot of people that don't ever get current, that we won't go to the highest case number ranges. In Africa, the worst behaving embassies are mainly in Africa. So Africa has a chance of going higher than it really should. But there are some regions like Oceania, for example, where there is absolutely no reason why they increase the number of selectees. And I'm 100% certain that we're not going to see, most of the people selected in Oceania ever getting current. They're not going to get current, right? Because we've got case numbers up to about 5,000. There's no way on earth we're going to see case numbers in the 4,000 range and probably the 3,000 range even getting close to getting current in Oceania. So yeah, thousands of people miss out. That's how it works, unfortunately. I'm DV24 selectee. This is in AP. Can I hire a lawyer? Why would you hire a lawyer, right? Yes, you will hire. I mean, you can hire a lawyer. There are lawyers out there that are more than happy to charge you money to try and speed up your process. But it's early December. There's lots of time. You would need to consider, why are you delayed? Why are you on AP, right? Is it something you've got to do, or is it background checking? If it's background checking, a lawyer can't speed that up, right? So if it's something you've got to do, if it's a document you've got to provide, you can provide that, right? So lawyers, for trying to speed up AP, in general, can't do very much. There is a situation where perhaps you can say the embassy is being unreasonable in delaying, and therefore they can speed things up. But that's probably not your case, since you're only in December, right? Early December. So honestly, you probably just want to relax and wait. Why are you going to spend more money on the case, right? Don't do that. Well, that's nice. So you got a little, looks like a donation of KES, which is, what's that, Kenyan shillings, 500 Kenyan shillings. What can I do with that? That's fun. In your opinion, how does the Zambian embassy perform? I'm not going to answer the questions of every single embassy, how they perform. So I've shown how you do that. Go ahead and have a look, right? Okay. Where else? AS33,000. Any chance I'm from Bhutan? Please go ahead and look at the video that I spent, quite a bit of time explaining the detail that I know of at this point about Asia in particular. Really, anyone from Asia shouldn't have any questions right now, because there's a video that I produced that really clearly lays that out in Asia. You should be able to have a look at that, and you'll understand how things are. You'll have more data in January, of course, and so that's going to be the better time to look as well. Okay, Mina, in DS-260, can I pass a 20-year-old unmarried child but specify that he is not coming with me to America? Pass the 21-year-old, yes. Unmarried child, yes. In the DS-260, you have to include all of your children, even if they're over 21, right? So you will include that child. And yes, you will select the option to say that he's not coming to America with you. That's how you do it. Okay, Mustaf, what about if I got DV24 and am married already and have a children's, but my first entry data was single? So the question is, can I maintain my DV journey only for singlehood, or add my DS to my family? I would say stop your DV journey. If you lied on your original entry, then you've created a problem for yourself, a big problem. If you then go ahead and fill in your DS-260 saying you're single, and you're not single, then you're creating immigration fraud, which is going to get you banned from America for life, right? Is that really worth that? I don't think you want to do that. So, number one, don't lie on the original entry. If you lied on the original entry and get selected, then bad luck. I'm always going to tell you to stop, right? Now, I know there are some people who will say some other things and try and convince you to continue, but let me just tell you, I read a story about a gentleman the other day. I think he was 61 years old. He went to, what did he do? He went to renew his passport. He's a citizen of the USA. He was born in the USA, but he happened to be born to a foreign diplomat in the USA. And there are some very strict rules about whether someone born to a foreign diplomat can become a citizen or not. Basically, they need to have one of the parents that is not a foreign person, right? But if they're born to a diplomat, then his parents should never have applied for citizenship for that child as a baby. He shouldn't have become a citizen. But for 61 years, he's continued fine. He goes to fill in his passport, and they realize that he was never actually qualified to be a citizen in the first place because the original lie, right? Because of the original mistake, which is what you're talking about, Mr. So at 61 years old, this American citizen who's just replacing his passport loses his citizenship. They can take your citizenship away from you because you originally lied on the entry or because you continued the lie on your DS-260 and so on. That can always happen, right? So you don't want to be building a house on weak foundations in that way, right? Now, for that citizen that had his passport taken away, or had his citizenship taken away, I'm sure he'll have a lawyer, fight for him. So I'm not too worried about that particular case. But for a DV lottery winner that lies during the entry and then lies on the DS-260, yeah, I think that's a really stupid idea. Right? Don't do that. Mina. I went to work in another country more than 17 years ago. Do I need to have a police certificate from the respective country? Yep. If you were there for more than 12 months, yep, you need to have a police certificate. Are there age limits? No, William, there's not specific age limits, although because of the education standard needed to enter, it's unlikely that many people less than about 17 or 18 would meet the qualifications, right? And then is there an upper age limit? No, there isn't an upper age limit. Starting with DV24, Nairobi is accepting medicals from IOM Uganda for the Ugandans only. Oh, that's interesting. Does this mean that in the near future, the US Embassy in Uganda may start DV-related interviews? I don't know. That you're connecting, taking 2 + 2 and trying to make it equal something else. It doesn't necessarily mean that. You're just putting things together and hoping. There's no promise of that, right? So, in fact, I'd almost say it's the opposite. That why would Nairobi go through that process of accepting those medicals from outside of outside the country from Ugandans if that was about to change so that Ugandans could interview in Uganda? Doesn't really make sense. But anyway, I'm not going to jump to that conclusion any more than I recommend you jump to the conclusion you're stating there. Bishace says, what about rescheduling the interview as an ACRO certificate takes a long time to come? Any suggestion? Don't reschedule the interview because you don't have one of the police certificates. And actually, the ACRO certificate doesn't take a long time to come. It takes typically a few weeks. You're talking about the British police system. Doesn't take long at all. I think I can't remember if I actually got it, but my thinking is it would take 3 to 5 weeks or something. But what you would do is you would attend your interview as scheduled, and then if you don't have that document, if it doesn't arrive by the day of the interview, then you simply send that into the embassy when it arrives. You don't reschedule the whole thing because of that. Okay. Ramosh says, I'm Uganda, Kampala City here. I'm asking how many people from Uganda who enter the USA on a green card lottery? You can get the official statistics. I'll show you where they are. Here we go. Let's put that back. Where am I? Let me show you how I would look. Okay, so you want to know the TV lottery statistics. Search for that. Program certificate, the statistics. Okay, so you can Google this. You can always Google things, guys. So DV visa program statistics. Right there, it shows you the number of entries received from each country in each program period, the number of selected entrants for each of these years, right? And right here, the number of issuances up to DV 2022 from various countries. So it's by region. So let's have a look down here. We'll zoom in a little bit so you can see this. Let's see. Where are we? Okay. Let's see. I've zoomed in too much now, probably. Uganda. Okay, so it's third row up from the bottom. There you go. So these are the years. Let me zoom out a little bit. These are the years. So they had 206 people in 22. They had 69 in 21, 64 in 2020, 133 in 2019. So you can see the data there. You can go ahead and Google that if you want to study it a little bit more. Okay. Okay. Mustaf, you're asking all sorts of questions here. So, Britt, my sister is a DV selectee to this year. She already got her interview and got an approved letter, but she didn't get her visa for about 2 weeks. What do you think to be the problem? Lack of patience is the problem. Be more patient. Jose Alvarez says, I like you. Gracias. That's nice. Walter Hanger says, hello, when do we expect some good news from Nairobi? I already gave you some good news from Nairobi. Said that they are doing better so far. October looked pretty good. What's the chance of selection for a person who is from Afghanistan and lives in Finland? Doesn't matter at all where you live. The question is, you're from Afghanistan. And I think it's probably around about 1 in 200, roughly. How many visas issued till now? 24 AS region, Bhutan. I don't know. Let's go here. Like, it's going to be a small number. I'm not even sure that Bhutan will even have registered yet. So, Bhutan. Oops. No, doesn't even register. So none. None is the answer. None from Bhutan. None were selected. Were issued. Oh, I'm sorry. 10. What am I doing? 10. Hang on a second. Let me show you that again. At the stage, yeah. There. I wonder if I showed you that data before. No, maybe I didn't. So okay, so here's Bhutan. 10 visas were issued in October, and when I was looking at the data for the lottery statistics, this is what I was looking at Uganda, and I got that from a web page where I Googled DV lottery statistics, and I got that data, right? If in case I didn't show that before. Okay. Salam loves my insightful knowledge. That's nice. God bless me. Thank you very much. I'm not sure God likes me, but never mind. How many years do you think the UK will be a part of the lottery? Probably only 2 to 3, I think. Probably about that. So they're on the borderline. So for many years, they've been excluded because through other immigration sources, they have a rolling count above 50,000 immigrants per year. So through family-based, employment-based, and what else? I always forget. Family-based, immediate relative, right? So through those 3 through those three bases. Immediate relative, by the way, is when an American marries a foreigner. So through those three types of immigration, the UK on a 5-year rolling window basis generally sends more than 50,000 people to the USA with immigrant visas. And that is why they've been excluded. Now, DV 2020 came along, or rather 2020 came along. There was a pandemic, as you might have noticed, and it cut immigration extremely hard. And so that was enough to take the numbers below 50,000, but only very slightly, right? So it wouldn't take much for the numbers to come back above 50,000. So I think we've got this year 25. We might see DV 26, maybe a third year, but it won't last very long. Okay, so okay. My previous question about the time we can stay outside the US is more about fear of losing the green card in case I don't find a job right away. While absent from the US, are well rec to her. Are we recommended? I don't get the last bit. But when you're out of the US, yes, you should keep a permanent address in the USA, ideally. That's not to say that you need to, come in on your activation interview or activation trip and immediately rent an apartment. You don't need to do that. But if you are living in the USA, it's perfectly normal that you go, for trips abroad, but those would be for a few weeks at a time, right? Now, going back to your thing about fear of losing the green card in case I don't find a job right away, you need to come with a proper plan, right? You need to come with some savings. You need to have a plan to be able to support yourself. And you need to be able to be a little bit humble to maybe take a job that is not at your level. You may be overqualified for some jobs you take, but you take a job, right? Because there's a funny thing about when you're looking for work. If you've got a job, you'll find it easier to find another job. It's just the way it works. And so let's say you're, sort of a senior manager at your job in, whatever country you're coming from. But when you come here, you can only get a job as a supervisor, but in that same industry. Take that job, right? Don't wait for the senior manager job. Take the job as a supervisor. If you're good, you'll quickly go up the ranks. You'll be able to maybe look for another job. If you're good, you'll be able to, get back to your level. But in terms of, there's plenty of jobs here. Unemployment is very low, right? And mostly unemployment is low because the people who are unemployed live in areas where there are fewer opportunities. But you're not going to be dumb enough to move to an area where there's no opportunity, right? So you'll be fine getting a job if you're open-minded to actually sort of doing work maybe a little bit below your level, but trying to get back. Okay, I've seen that happen many times, and it works out for people. It's the right way to do it. Okay, I applied 21 and 22 and didn't get selected. Do I need to report that if consular officer asks if I go with the regular process getting a visa? It's very rare they would ask that sort of thing. But anytime a consular officer asks you a question, tell the truth. Just simply that. And the truth won't harm you. Lying will. Paige says, morning, Simon. Just woke up in Melbourne. Good morning. It's 5 a.m. Oh, I have to talk quietly. Don't want to wake up the kids. Hope you're doing good. Got my medical next week on Monday. Good luck for that. I'm sure the medical will be fine. There's no problem with that. But then good luck for the interview. All right. Thanks for dropping in. Nobody would vote for racist Donald Trump. You know what? And Dello Culo. I'm hoping that doesn't mean what I think it means. Anyway, nobody would vote for racist Donald Trump. They do. A lot of people did. There were 70 million people who voted for him in 2020. 70 million people, 72 million or something. 80 million voted for Biden. But 70 million people, what the hell were they thinking? And there are some people who are absolutely determined to vote for him again, whatever he does. and they absolutely won't believe any information. They won't listen to any facts or figures. They say the election was stolen in 2020. There were 61 lawsuits after the 2020 election. In 61 lawsuits, the Trump side failed to provide even a shred of evidence, not anything. They didn't provide any evidence of any scheme to defraud the election in some way, to steal the election. There's been no evidence. But still, you try and tell a Trumper that, and they won't believe it. They're just determined that he's the best thing ever, and he did great for this country, even though he ruined the economy. He took an economy that was coming from Obama, was doing really good. He rode those coattails for 2 or 3 years. He cut taxes for the rich. He made those tax cuts for the rich. He made those permanent. He also cut tax for the normal people, but he made those tax cuts temporary, so phased out. So these dopey people that vote for him say, "Oh, he's given us a tax cut." Yeah, but it's phased out over 5 years. It's bullshit. He's just conning people, It's just, in so many ways, it's hilarious. But anyway, don't get me started. Oh, sorry, I already did. Daniel says, please, for the education eligibility, do you need to pass your exams excellently? You need to pass them to a certain level. So, for example, in some countries, they might say that for the core subjects of, let's say, English, math, and physics or something, that you have to have at least a D, right? A D passing grade or better. So if you got an F, a fail, in English or math, in some countries, that means you didn't qualify, you won't qualify for DV lottery. Okay, so yeah, it's not that you have to get an A, but you need to pass at a certain level. Amanda says, good question. Do any other countries have the equivalent of DV lottery? I'm not aware of any of them. There's not quite such a desire to move to most countries as there is to America. Some countries are a bit pickier, like to get into Australia for many years. They've had, for example, a point system in Australia and New Zealand based on family connections, based on skills, and those sort of things, right? And so, those are desirable countries to enter. Europe has got similar sort of things in place, but not quite as rigid. But I don't know of any other country that has literally a lottery system to it. But then I don't know of another country that people would, sort of cut off their left leg to live in. I think America is probably the number one country in the world for people wanting to emigrate. If I win the green card, can you help me get a host? No, Joseph. And I want to just say that there are some people out there that are sort of trying to connect people with hosts and that sort of thing. If that's a worthwhile thing to do for someone, to connect someone to a host, but do that without charge, right? Why do you have to charge for that? Why do you have to rip people off? So if I were doing that, Joseph, which I'm not going to, I would not charge for that service. I would, if I connect you with someone, that would be something I would do because I want to help you, because it's the right thing to do. I wouldn't do it because I'm trying to make $50 or whatever. So yeah, but no, it's not something I do, Joseph. Nice bit of encouragement there for Paige. Okay. DV23 winner from Tanzania, now in California. Congratulations. Probably down the road from me. Good for you. Campaign, good day, Simon. Since if we don't have to take our vaccine records, do we have to take all of the childhood vaccines over again as adults? No. That's a great question. Typically, the physicians in each country know what vaccination programs have been in place in those countries. So they will know, for example, if you had, I don't know, diphtheria or whatever it is, the sort of the little injection that creates the little dots. They will know if you had those injections because they know there's been a program, for example, to eradicate measles or whatever. And so they will use some local knowledge and perhaps whatever records you have to determine whether you need additional vaccines or not. And they're usually pretty good. They're not going to, stick like 20 different jabs in you on that day. They might just give you a few extras, right? That's all. Greetings from Nairobi. Thank you, Expert Travels. Okay, a couple more questions here. Once someone gets the visa, how much time he has to relocate in the worst case scenario? And how often can he re-enter without issues? When you get your visa, it's got an expiry date in the visa, which is dated 6 months after your medical. Normally the medical is done before the interview, right? So you've got until then to relocate into the USA or to enter the USA for the first time. But that can, if you want, it can just be an activation trip. You have to enter the USA. Maybe you hang out for a couple of weeks. You look around. You have a look at some areas that you'd like to live in. And then you go home for 6 months or 9 months or whatever. And you tidy up loose ends back in your home country, ready for the big move. You can do that. There's no problem with that. Okay. Unable to verify my DS-260 with my case number because the result's not valid. It was done months ago, got the receipt. Is it a problem? It probably means you're not putting the right information in. Be very careful about not trying too many times because you'll lock your DS-260. So check out all the information. Check the confirmation number, check the case number. Make sure you're entering everything in correctly and try one more time, right? And if that still doesn't work, come and ask me again and I'll point you to the video or you can go and look at it. I've got a video which helps you put the right data into your form. Okay. Wife is in F2. We are filling AOS adjustment status next month. Is it worth filling I-765s for her? Will she have to leave USA if AOS doesn't go through? I don't want to answer this one. There is someone's mum, right? I'm hoping you know who I'm talking about. At forums.immigration.com, there is a person who has a username of someone's mum, who's the absolute best expert that we have in DV lottery adjustment of status. And you absolutely need to be following every bit of advice she gives. And that's a question she should answer. I think the I-765 is the work authorization thing, but don't. I don't want to sort of give you advice about that because she can tell you whether whether there is a chance that someone loses their status or not, right? And it is a concern, so you need to get it right. And that's why I tend to leave those questions for someone's mum because she's truly an expert. Okay. Hi, Britt. If you win for DV and you live in Europe as an asylum seeker waiting for your documents and you won the DV-25 as a single person and your child is based in your home country, says Brian. Okay, no question here. But what could your question be? It's probably down here somewhere. How are you going to process is probably going to be your question. You could process in your country where you're living as an asylum seeker, and then you could try and get an interview for your child later on in their home country, but it's risky. Okay, so it would be better that you bring the child to that country for where you're living now for an interview, or you leave that country, go to your home country for your interview. Either one of those is a sensible option, depending on why, of course, you left the country and whether you can get back into your own country. Okay. Hybrid, how many visas were issued till now? DV-24. Not many. The numbers are there. I think it's something like 750 or something. It's not very many. CLM has not started. Really? Is that true? Sri Lanka's not started interviewing yet. Will the delay disadvantage the country? Yeah, any time an embassy doesn't start and use all the months it can, that's a problem. That's going to delay people, right? And it could disadvantage them. Hopefully they won't continue, but it's after seeing 1 month of data out of a 12-month process, it's a bit early to panic. Okay, so don't panic yet. Any idea why Northern Ireland doesn't get many selectees? Because they don't have many entries, I guess. It's not a big country. It's not. There's no allocation of visas to any country, as I mentioned earlier in this video. So it's purely based on the number of people that enter from that country. Originally, the lottery was actually made for Irish. It was designed around let's bring more Irish people, right? So, you have to take that to heart. More people should enter. UK's eligible. Go ahead and enter. Case number is 2.2, AS 2.2. It's already current, but don't receive the second notification letter. Tell me what is the problem. I don't know what the problem is. Is your DS260 processed? I don't know. Is the delay to do with your embassy? Are you at an embassy that is not working? I don't know. So I don't know your case. I don't know the specifics about it. Hello, won't they talk about DV 2020 again? They will once the appeal is decided. We have to wait for the appeal. That's all we can do. Luca, now as a lawyer, I still came back here. Still come back here whenever I want to take the green card class again. No more reliable source than this channel. Thank you, Luca. It's good to speak to you. You're still waiting patiently for your chance too. Although I hope you're entering every year, just in case as well. Can I raise my voice on behalf of DV 2020? Harry, we just have to wait. I'm afraid it's frustrating. Luca will tell you. It's a very frustrating time. I get it. We've been waiting well over a year for the appeal court to make their decision, but there's no way we can hurry them up. There's just no mechanism to do that. Okay, let's take one more question here. Okay, Alex, last question here. What if my appearance changes between application and interview? Could I be rejected to a slight mismatch between photo and real life look? Slight mismatch? No. I mean, if it's unlikely that you changed your look that dramatically in that time period. What have you done? I mean, you may have lost some weight, you may have gained some weight, you may have grown your hair, you may have cut your hair. I don't know. But those things generally aren't going to change your appearance that badly. Now, if you were in some sort of accident and you blew off both your ears or something, then yeah, you're going to look a little bit different to how your photo was. But you've still got ID, and the rest of your face will still match, right? So it shouldn't really be a problem. Okay. All right, everybody. I think that's all I need to do. Oh, Zell, who did a little donation there, which I appreciate. Thank you. Just said thanks a lot for the educational videos. Very welcome. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining me today. Please do subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. I've got videos planned for this week. There'll be 2 or 3 videos coming out this week. A couple of interesting ones. So look out for those. Do make sure you're subscribed and that you get notified by clicking the bell button for when new videos come out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.